Hi, this is Bob with a story for you. Today's story? No, please, not that. Picture it, Hollywood, 1985. In the middle of December, I had to find a new place to live. My landlord was suffering from mental illness. Sadly, this later culminated in him taking his own life. Someone had told me about a Hungarian woman who had a room for rent in her Beachwood Canyon home below the famous Hollywood sign. The rent was only $200 a month, which was unbelievable for Los Angeles. So I signed on the dotted line. I should have realized there would be a catch. My room, with an adjoining bathroom, was right at the entrance of the house. It was the only room on the first floor. From there, you climbed the stairs to the main floor, complete with living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and another bathroom. The owner of the house was indeed Hungarian, but looked nothing like Zsa Zsa Gabor. She had dark hair, was in her mid-50s, and spoke loudly with a heavy accent. Her last name was Beachwood. She was very clear that it should be pronounced Beachwood, not Bag Lady. She told me that she would be flying to New York City in a few days. My job was to collect the mail and to make sure her German Shepherd Bruno was fed and to let him out into the backyard daily. On the day of her departure, I awakened to the sound of Bruno barking, a taxi honking, and Mrs. Beachwood yelling, "I coming. So it was literally, ruff, 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 honk, honk, I coming. This went on for a few minutes. Just before she exited the house, I heard her yell, "Bruno, bah!" I later discovered that Bruno, bah was her reaction to the fact that she forgot Bruno had not been let out in the backyard and had relieved himself on the carpet. But she left that cleaning up job for me. Yuck. It seems no matter how early I let him out, he still defecated in the living room. I too yelled, "Bruno, bah!" Mrs. Beachwood returned from New York with Mr. Beachwood for Christmas. He was a very interesting guy, too. When I told him about my former landlord's suicide, he said, "Suicide is a very, very difficult thing to understand." When I had difficulty figuring out which light switches turned on the various lights, he said, "The electrical system is a very, very difficult thing to understand." And what about Bruno? You guessed it. "The dog's bowel movements are a very, very difficult thing to understand." After New Year's Day, Mr. Beachwood headed back to Manhattan. It was just me and Mrs. Beachwood. I pretty much kept to myself. The landlady seemed nice enough, but we didn't have much in common to discuss. Then it happened. I was working the swing shift at radio TV reports in Hollywood. My shift ended at midnight. I drove to the Beachwood house. It was dark as pitch. She never left any outside lights on. Nice. I got out of my car after waiting a few minutes for my eyes to adjust. I made my way slowly to the front door when all of a sudden I heard Mrs. Beachwood scream, No, please, not that. My hair stood straight up. Had there been a home invasion? Was she being robbed? Or worse? I had never been in a situation like this. What should I do? Get in my car and speed away to a payphone and call the police? I sure wasn't going to play hero and enter the house. I was only 27. I wanted to live many more years. I did the sensible thing. I froze. And then I realized something. Bruno wasn't barking. That was strange. At the least little sound, he usually barked a lot. So I decided to tiptoe into the house and enter my room and bolt the door. I started to phone the police, but I didn't. The house was so quiet I was afraid to make a sound. Was Mrs. Beglotti dead upstairs? Would the killer get into my room and kill me too? Oh, for the comfort and safety of my old bedroom in my parents' house. The hours passed. I did eventually doze off. Then at 6 a.m., I heard a voice. It was Mrs. Beglotti. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, I've got to get home," a man replied. "Well, this was so much fun, Hector. Let's do this again soon." "Sure thing," said Hector. I peered out the window and saw a young guy get into his car and drive away. Oh, Mrs. Beglotti, what have you been up to? A few weeks later, I heard the same words being screamed by Mrs. Beglotti when I got home at midnight. "No, no, please, not that, not that." Now, I'm all for keeping an open mind and not being judgmental, but this was just too much. 2 weeks later, I found a new place to live. I told Mrs. Beglotti that I had accepted a job in Atlanta and would be leaving. "I don't believe you," she yelled. "Believe what you like," I said back to her. My parents taught me not to lie to people, but somehow I think they would have understood in this case. And as for Mr. Beglotti, I guess he'd say, "My wife's fantasies are a very, very difficult thing to understand." And that's our story. Have a good day.